What's up, party people? I know I promised to do a short story every week, but I didn't do one this week because I finished reading 2 other books, so I think we'll have lots to talk about. I finished reading the Communist Manifesto, and then also Don Quixote, alright, which is a big one. And then also I bought a bunch of CDs off Marketplace, so no books this week, but I did pick up quite a few CDs. I think there's 16 or 17 there, so yeah, that's just a sneak peek. We'll get into those in a minute. But yeah, starting with the Communist Manifesto, I don't really know what I was expecting. We read this for book club. We don't really do a lot of nonfiction in the book club. We do mostly fiction, but you know, I thought I'd mix it up. I was expecting this to spark some good discussion, which I think maybe it will. I think in order to discuss it intelligently, you'd have to know a lot more about history, which a lot of us maybe don't have the background in, so that might limit our potential for discussion, but I think there's still enough here to get us through an hour at least. So anyways, I just wanted to highlight a couple sections because I don't know how many self-proclaimed communists I have subscribed to my channel. Hopefully not very many. But I'd suggest you, if you think you're a communist and you haven't read this, you should read it, because he says some pretty strange things in here that you wouldn't necessarily expect, right? Because not only does he take a sort of leftist view on economics and like a centrally planned economy, but he also makes some claims about religion and the family and things that aren't necessarily directly tied to economics, right? So he makes not only economic argument but also a cultural argument. So yeah, because for Marx everything has to do with the opposition of an oppressed class and an oppressing class, which he applies not only to the economy but also to the family and things like this. So yeah, very singular focus in that regard. A couple things I wanted to point out. This is not a comprehensive review of the book, but I just wanted to point a few things out. On my copy, this is page 93. He's talking about the economics of communism, and he's saying that the modern laborer, on the contrary, instead of rising with the progress of industry, sinks deeper and deeper below the condition of existence of his own class. He becomes a pauper, and pauperism develops more rapidly than population and wealth. So he's saying that, well, as capitalism increases and industry increases, the standard of living goes down, which is laughably false, right? I mean, the Western world has become more and more capitalist since Marx's time, and the standard of living has like universally increased in all capitalist countries, right? So he kind of completely misses the nail on that one. And then I wanted to quickly highlight some of his views on the family, which are, I know, as a Christian, I can't endorse any of this, but he basically just wants to abolish the family. He doesn't like the family in any respect. This is on page 100 of my copy. He's saying, abolition of the family, even the most radical flare-up at this infamous proposal of the communists. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain. So he's saying that the only foundation that the family is built on is money, or like property, which makes no sense, right? He has no sense of maybe like love or like duty or anything like this, right? It's just money, which makes no sense, right? But I mean, Marx was a materialist, so his whole system was dialectical materialism, right? The whole Hegel influence and all that nitty-gritty stuff. Anyways, seeing the family just in terms of money makes really no sense at all. But hey, good for you. Super cool. Anyways, and then he predicts that the bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course when its complement vanishes, and both will vanish with the vanishing of capital. So he thinks that when you abolish private property, the family will inevitably vanish as well, which, I don't know. Apparently communism has never been tried, apparently, so maybe we don't know whether or not that's true, but yeah, definitely evil either way. So, and then he has some super weird views on women. So again, no notion of like love or like mutual benefit. He just sees everything in terms of the exploiter and the exploited, right? So where does it say here? The bourgeois, right? So that's like the ruling class who owns the means of production. The bourgeois sees in his wife a mere instrument of production. What? Who said that? Marx is just making these grand generalizations. Like, on what authority does he say that people actually think this? Maybe he thinks this, which is cringe, but, like, what? Like, it makes no sense. Anyways, and then he basically goes on to argue that under communism, the best way, once you abolish the family, is to have, like, a harem, basically, like a community of women, that there's no marriage. And then he argues that even in capitalism, the community of women exists, and it's not actually created by communism because all the bourgeois husbands are seducing each other's wives. Like, it makes no sense. Bourgeois marriage is in reality a system of wives in common, and thus, at the most, what the communists might possibly be reproached with is that they desire to introduce, in substitution for a hypocritically concealed, an openly legalized community of women. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Oh, here's the sentence, the funny one. Are bourgeois not content with having the wives and daughters of their proletarians at their disposal? Not to speak of common prostitutes, take the greatest pleasure in seducing each other's wives. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Anyways, is there anything else I wanted to? Oh yeah, and then there's on 2 pages later on page 103, he says something that kind of makes everything click, and then you kind of understand his notion of communism. He says, there are besides eternal truths, such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society. He's putting words in a capitalist's mouth, basically. And he's talking about, like, objective truth, right? So he's saying that capitalists would claim that there are besides eternal truths, such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society. But then Marx says, but communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion, all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis, it therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. And now, after reading that, you kind of understand. Everything else he's saying, it doesn't even matter if it's true or false, because he's going to make it into reality with his new communism, right? It abolishes all eternal truths, all objective morality, all religion, everything like that. So he's just kind of making things up based on what he thinks and what he wants. Yeah, that makes no sense. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of all I wanted to point out there. I have some discussion questions that we'll go through, so should be a decent book club, we'll see. Up next, we're doing Thomas Hardy's Return of the Native. I haven't read any Thomas Hardy, but in about a month and a half, you can expect to see that one, so that'll be fun. Next up, here we've got Don Quixote. Now, this is just shy of 1,000 pages. This is thick, and I did a bit of a reading marathon last night, finished the last 100 or so pages. A little sprint at the end there to get it done. And so much happens in this book that I cannot give you a summary, because it's so many things happen. And I'm not sure who the rascal or the upstart was that told me that the first half was better than the second. Totally false, okay? The first half I kind of was like, it was alright. Second half was much more enjoyable. I think the first half was very episodic. It kind of just felt like he does this, then this happens, and everything's all disjointed. But in the second half, there's a lot more continuity of plot. And so I definitely appreciated that. While, like, no particular part of the narrative stands out to me, it's all kind of generally good. There's not, like, any, like, crazy highlights. I mean, people have their own favorite sections, of course, but there wasn't, like, really any standout section of chapters. With that being said, once you read this, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, his squire, you'll never forget about them, okay? Like, they're just very memorable characters. And, I mean, Don Quixote is cool, but I think everyone's favorite character is Sancho Panza, right? Like, this guy is so funny. He's always, like, saying all these different sayings and stuff. And I hope to, in my life, one day, to be able to be just like Sancho. Put down a bunch of wine and cheese and then just, like, blurt out 20 proverbs and just rattle off the top of the dome, right? So this guy's super funny. One might even say wise. Harold Bloom might say that. Might say that Sancho is infinitely wise. But yeah, super great. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really give, like I said, can't really give you a good, decent summary of this book just because so much happens in it. I mean, I can give you a general idea, right? Don Quixote, he's this farmer in a small village in Spain. I think, yeah, Spain. And he reads these romance books about knights and stuff, and he thinks they're real histories. And so he believes that he is called to the career or the vocation of knight errantry. And so he buys a suit of armor, gets his old skinny horse, and a lance and a shield, and he goes out into the wide world to right wrongs, succor maidens and widows, and just try to do good things. And he's so bumbling and stupid, and he just messes everything up and doesn't really help people. But the theme that the book continually plays with is that of the useful fiction. And so even though Don Quixote is like totally out to lunch, like he thinks that inns are castles, he thinks that sheep are like a bunch of war steeds with like knights on them, he thinks that like ugly peasant girls are princesses, right? He has all these false beliefs about the world, but the way in which his beliefs are false are actually beneficial to him and other people. Now, he fails to deliver on his desired tasks, right? Sometimes he'll try to help people and he'll often fail miserably and make things worse. But that's not the point, right? The point is that he has unwavering courage, unwavering virtue, and he is so committed to his ideal that it's almost inspiring. And even though he fails to deliver on his ideal, he is so strong at withholding it that, yeah, it's just like inspiring. He's like a beacon of truth and hope, I suppose. And so it just made me think about like, what are some useful fictions that people might hold today that would be beneficial to society? I don't really have any answer to that right now. I'd have to do some more reflection. But yeah, just the idea of the useful fiction, I think is very interesting and very important. So yeah, cool book. It's very long. Okay, would I put it at the top of your reading list? Probably not. You definitely should read it before you die, 100%. But yeah, I wouldn't put it necessarily at the top of your list. But yeah, anyways, if you've got time for it, sure. Now, that's all for books this week. So if you're just here for the books, you can click away. But I do have some CDs that I mentioned earlier. I went to buy off this guy off Marketplace. I mentioned as well the past couple weeks I've been into the classic rock and the classic metal, like 80s and 90s stuff. And so this guy was selling all my favorite stuff. I actually had to like leave a lot on the table. I only bought maybe a fifth of what he had, just because it's expensive. He was charging like between $4 to $5 per CD, and it's not awful prices, but usually I'd only want to pay about $1. But anyways, here we go. Okay. I've got the best of Def Leppard. So, and a lot of these I haven't listened to yet. I've listened to maybe 3 or 4 of them, so I'll mention that as I go along. But yeah, Def Leppard, haven't listened to it yet, but excited to. Kiss Destroyer. Okay, the reason I bought this is because when my dad was a kid, he lived in the same room as his brother, and they had a giant painting on the wall, and this was the painting. So he kind of grew up in that era, and apparently Kiss is like the most marketed band of all time. I don't know what the figure is, but yeah, so that's, and like the cover is just kind of classic. I have listened to this. I didn't think it was that great, but you know, it's a piece of history. How about that? And also, very interesting, if you look closely at the inside cover, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, there are markings on the inside of that plastic, and it looks like a credit card was imprinted upon the inside of the jewel case, and it expired in 1989. I didn't even know they had credit cards back then, but yeah, there's like, you can make out like the name Batali Chev, Lakewood Boulevard. Cool. Yeah. Anyways, also apparently, because nowadays when you use your credit card, it will talk to Moneris or Interact or whatever. It'll check to make sure you have the funds, right? Then it'll pull it out of your account. But back then they didn't have the internet, right? So what would happen is when you paid for something with a credit card at the restaurant, they would have the 3 pieces of paper, and they'd like pull like a piece of like a weight over it, like, and it would take an imprint of the credit card, which is why the numbers on your credit card are embossed on the card. It's because they used to like push down on the credit card and it would make the imprint on the piece of paper, which is called a carbon copy, right? And then 1 copy would be for the customer, 1 for the restaurant, and then the 3rd one would be mailed into the credit card company, and the credit card company would pull the funds off of your account, which is only possible in a high trust society, right? Because nowadays, if that was the way people did it, they would just take a credit card but have no money on it and just go on a spending spree, right? Oh, I'm dropping CDs. And it would take a few days for the credit card company to find out that people are pulling money off of it with no no funds. But yeah, that's the way they did it. And so I guess when you CC somebody on an email, that stands for carbon copy. And I guess that's the same thing they used to do with the credit cards. I don't know how that connects, but yeah, interesting little bit of history there. I've also got a best of Iron Maiden. I have listened to this one, and I was impressed. I liked it quite a bit. Now, one thing I find kind of cringe is that a lot of these like metal and like classic rock bands from the 80s, they all have like this like dark aesthetic. They're all like obsessed with like hell and like demons and stuff like that. And I don't know, it's just kind of weird. But I guess that was just the aesthetic back then, right? It reminds me of like Eddie Munson in Stranger Things. Like, I mean, in that movie, it's more just portrayed as an aesthetic. It doesn't really go that deep. But yeah, it makes you wonder. I don't know. Did they have some sort of ulterior motive? I don't know. But here I've got a couple of Judas Priest. I haven't listened to these yet, but I'm excited to. So there you go, those two. These being Angel of Retribution and Screaming for Vengeance. I've got one Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. So that is cool. I haven't listened to this yet. But it has Sweet Child of Mine on it, Paradise City, Welcome to the Jungle, right? Tons of classics on that one. Then I've got this one, AC/DC, Highway to Hell. Just listened to this one today. I did enjoy it. I mean, the title track is the best one, right? But the other tracks were good. They didn't stand out too much. This next one I've listened to. I just got it on Monday, and I've listened to it like 6 times already. I don't even know. It's very good. I was blown away. Metallica, Kill 'Em All. The reflection is real bad off the light, but this was good. Favorite song, I don't even know, but the guitars go crazy. I don't even know how you practice like that. It's so fast. But yeah. Anyways, I also got a few other Metallicas that I haven't listened to yet. That being Reload, and also their self-titled, which is kind of like a black, and it's got like the Do Not Tread on Me snake in the corner. It's hard to see it, but yeah, so that's cool. I'm looking forward to listening to these. Very testosterone-y, very aggressive and unapologetic, so pretty cool. And then I was very lucky, and I mean, I found Van Halen's 1984, and then the red one. I forget what it's called. I showed it to you a few weeks ago. I found the rest of the albums. I got 4. So I've got this red and white one, Driver Down. Fair Warning. Okay, well, kind of a weird cover. And then Van Halen, self-titled. Okay, that's the one with Eruption on it, which apparently a little birdie told me that was just accidentally recorded warm-up Eruption, so that's cool. It's also got Jamie's Crying, Running with the Devil. Yeah, a lot of great songs on that album. And then Van Halen 2, which I haven't listened to yet, so that one's looking good though. Do I recognize any of these? Not really, but maybe when I hear them, I'll recognize it. And then the last grouping here I got was Motley Crue. So we've got Red, White, and Crew, which I think is a compilation album, I'm not sure. I also got Decade of Decadence, which also sounds like a compilation album. But then I got, this is the good one, Dr. Feelgood. And this is the one that has the classic Kickstart My Heart, right? Which the guitars at the beginning of that song are insane. You cannot hear the beginning of Kickstart My Heart and not just like feel the energy. So yeah, Motley Crue, and that's it. So pretty cool. And I've noticed that, I don't know why this is the case, but we've been pretty consistent every week, around 18 to 19 minutes per video. So what's up with that? I don't know. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. See you next week.